Hello everyone, thank you for joining me, and thank you to those of you who are new to the channel. It means the world to me, it really does. We've grown very quickly recently, and it's a great little community that we're building together, so thank you so much. Today I wanted to look at Pathfinder's quest and the next chapter. Um, the next chapter is chapter 3, Devil in the Details. It's about Watson. There's a large chunk of it which is based around the ghost. If you remember voice lines between Watson and Wraith, Watson said to her that she saw a ghost in the labs, and they kind of figured out between the two of them that it actually was Wraith. So in the story, we see that Natalie has to go down to the labs to get some bubble technology, which is very similar to Gibraltar's dome. And during that time, Wraith had used her portal to go into the labs to find more out about herself. But if you want to get the book, I highly recommend it. It's great for all the lore behind some of these characters. And I'm going to miss out the story of the ghost just because it's a couple of pages long. It's quite a big chunk of her story. But through like voice lines and things, you'll probably know most of what happened through the game anyway. So let's begin. So Pathfinder has gone to a small fishing village on the other side of the Duchess River in Kings Canyon, which is part of Solas City. One thing with each chapter is they do like a self-motivational quote for Pathfinder, and I found it funny that both of the quotes they have used are from Edison and Tesla. So you should know in history, obviously they were to do with electricity and electric lighting, and obviously Watson being an electric based character, I found it quite amusing anyway. So when this book was written, Natalie is meant to be 22 at the time. As far as I know, the book was written in 2019, and that would make Watson about the same age as me. And it's quite weird to think, like, if the Apex Games or something like the Hunger Games even actually existed in real life, or like gladiators or something. Like, what would you do in that situation? How would you be? Because I just can't comprehend it personally. So it's quite interesting to like put myself in those shoes and being like, you know what, I wouldn't have a clue. Yeah, so for Watson to kind of be around my age, it brings it home a little bit, I guess. Although obviously I know all of this is fictional, but it's interesting all the same. So when Watson was younger, she studied a lot of her father's manuals about what he was doing, all his work, so that she could stay close to him and I guess have something kind of in common with him. And there's a really interesting quote here that is in the book, and it says, "Discovered she had discovered her calling at a young age. Though she could be completely distracted one moment and hyper-focused the next, electricity grounded her. Its ordered, predictable flow made sense in a way the rest of the world didn't." Now, I could be kind of going off a complete random branch, but it kind of sounds like she has like ADHD or something. Um, I've known people with ADHD, but I don't know enough about it, but that's what it kind of implies to me. Let me know what you guys think. And as you should know, Watson created the ring in the Apex games, and she's also created the heat shields that we have recently seen in the games as well. And sadly, her dad died the day that her containment ring was revealed to the games. And I don't know if we'll get it or not, but if we have any voice lines between Pathfinder and Watson and he calls her Nat, that's kind of just a nod to this chapter, just sort of reflecting back because they had a conversation about names and how significant they are, how meaningful they are. but everyone has many names, like nicknames, and your Christian name gets shortened, that kind of thing, and everyone calls you something different depending on how they know you and kind of circumstances. So that it was just a nod towards that. So if there's any reason Pathfinder calls her Nat, it's to do with this chapter and this book. Something I found really interesting, I didn't expect to see in this chapter, is why Pathfinder can scan survey beacons. So to do with the ghost as well, after what happened with there was a fire and Watson, I think, got electrocuted as well. That's why she's got her scar on her face. It's all to do with that night where she saw Wraith. After all of that happened, she told her dad, and her dad created a file and uploaded it to all the Marvins to basically protect and look after Watson. So with this, he secretly uploaded the file to all of them, and Marvins could already like see living things like animals and people where they were on the map at any one time. So he added this into their system so that they could then also see where the ring was, so that Watson could be protected at all times. And it's just a really sort of sad but interesting story behind why Pathfinder has that. When Watson joined the games, she then took that programming out of Pathfinder so that he wouldn't have to look after her. So there was like still the protection element of that program, and she took that away from him so that she wasn't cheating, because her dad was kind of like, well, if you win but you've cheated, you've still lost. And that was his way of thinking. So she took that on very deeply and made a point of not letting Pathfinder still protect her when he didn't really have to. And I thought this was quite sweet as well. It's also kind of sad. The story behind the Nessies. So her mother, before she died, sewed and created this Nessie toy for Watson, and then her dad had someone replicate it and create many of them, and as a child she would play hide and seek with them, but the one that her mum made, she would never lose it. That would always be on her. And I feel like even through the games it probably still is. Like, I feel like she probably has a secure pocket somewhere that she just leaves her Nessie. I just thought that was really sweet, and that's where the Nessies come from. That's why she has a little Nessie emote that she pops them out. And yeah, it was just really sad but interesting part of her backstory. So with the games, we know that her dad did a lot of work on them, and her dad helped create the systems like the loot bins, respawn beacons, and then like the whirlpools that take you off the map. So the whirlpools were created to stop competitors from swimming away from the games, and sort of bring you back into the game, so you couldn't actually escape halfway through a match. And yeah, as I was saying before with the ghost story, the ring that Watson created, this was based on an active denial system which was called a heat ray, which was used for crowd control. And Watson used this idea and hypothesized that if she could use a bubble shield across the whole map, and then put another one inside of that, and put the particles from the crowd control heat ray in the middle of it, she could create a ring, and then she just had to work out how to make it shrink. So this is how we've got the ring that we have today. And this chapter also talks about Watson's family and her grandmother, Amelie, who we obviously suspected was going to be her grandmother anyway. It completely confirms that it is, but her grandmother was actually a geologist, and Watson says that she knows from her dad that she died in a lab explosion. Um, and obviously through one of our last comic strips that we had, that was confirmed to be true, through what Pathfinder went through. And Amelie was actually a scientist looking at alternative fuels, which is also how Watson and Gibraltar are connected. If you go back and watch my other comic strip video, not comic strip, Pathfinder quest on Solas to Solas, which is Gibraltar based, um, that chapter talks a lot about all of this, um, the lab and how many people were working together. It's a really interesting story. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this. As always, guys, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.